My name is Aisha Malik, and I'm 36 years old. I've spent my entire life in Manchester, England. From the outside, my life seemed picture perfect. I was a committed lawyer, admired for my professionalism, married to a caring and diligent husband named Samir. Together, we were raising our two wonderful children, Yasmin, who was 12, and Adam, who had just turned 9. Our family was built on tradition, and above all, on faith. Islam wasn't merely my religion, it defined me. It influenced every aspect of my life. I prayed 5 times a day without fail, fasted during every Ramadan, gave generously to those in need, and dressed modestly. I'd even been blessed to perform Hajj once, an experience that remained one of the most profound moments in my memory. In our community, people associated me with a deep commitment to the Quran. I was often invited to recite it at gatherings or teach it to children, as I could recite with clarity and emotion. I felt a sense of calling in, guiding others, believing I was fulfilling a duty set by God. Samir and I also ensured Yasmin and Adam grew up revering Islam. We emphasized regular prayer, the value of humility, and the importance of distancing themselves from a materialistic life. To everyone looking in, our life was stable, grounded, and secure. Yet beneath the surface, my faith wasn't as unmovable as it appeared. Occasionally, doubts would surface, brief moments where silent questions tugged at my heart. I never admitted them to Samir, my friends, or even fully to myself. Late at night, while staring at the ceiling, I couldn't ignore them. If Allah is all-merciful, how could He sentence kind-hearted people to eternal punishment simply because they weren't Muslims? Why did certain aspects of our religious teachings reduce women's roles, like in inheritance, legal testimony, or leadership? I was familiar with the scholarly responses, which insisted God's wisdom went beyond human understanding. But these answers sometimes felt like temporary bandages over festering wounds of doubt. One evening, Yasmin came to me with a question that stopped me in my tracks. Her best friend at school, Emma, was not Muslim. Yasmin asked uncertainly, "Mama, will Emma go to hell? She's so kind. It doesn't seem fair." I froze. My ingrained teachings made me reply that following the wrong religion leads to eternal damnation. As soon as I said it, the words felt empty and almost foreign. I hurriedly changed the subject, but her question lingered in my mind. Life carried on, as it does, filled with work obligations, parenting, and keeping the household running. Most of the time, my familiar patterns of faith kept those nagging questions out of sight. Then came the morning of March 14th, which began like any other. I rose before dawn for the Fajr prayer, moving quietly through the house while my family slept. Afterward, I prepared breakfast, making sure Yasmin had her school books and Adam remembered his project. Samir gave me a light kiss on the cheek on his way to work, and I grabbed my briefcase, heading for a client meeting in the city. It was a clear, sunny day, rare for Manchester, and as I drove, the Quran played gently on the radio, settling my nerves while I thought about my upcoming appointments. The roads were surprisingly calm for a weekday, and I felt a wave of gratitude. Everything seemed to be going well, and I briefly thought about the upcoming Ramadan, the meals I would cook, the extra prayers I planned to perform, and the ways I wanted to make the month special for my family. In that moment, those nagging doubts seemed far away. That's when everything changed. I merged onto the motorway and noticed a lorry ahead transporting large timber logs. The straps holding the logs looked worn and frayed. A slight apprehension stirred inside me, but I brushed it off and kept a safe distance. My mind wandered to the upcoming Ramadan again, thinking about how I could deepen my devotion. As the road curved slightly, the lorry hit a bump. One of the straps snapped, sending a massive log hurtling toward my car like a projectile. I slammed on the brakes, but it was too late. The last thing I remember was gripping the wheel, my heart thudding in my chest, and whispering, "Allah, help me," before everything went black. When I opened my eyes, I wasn't in my car, at least not in any normal sense. I was hovering above the crash site, watching the twisted wreck of my vehicle from above. Emergency responders were frantically trying to free my body from the mangled metal. Strangely, I felt neither pain nor panic, only an odd tranquility, like I was watching someone else's tragedy unfold. I saw my own motionless form and was struck by an astonishing thought. I was no longer alive in the way I had always understood life. Suddenly, a light appeared. It wasn't blinding, but gentle and warm, like the soft glow of sunrise after the darkest night. It embraced me, bringing with it an indescribable peace and an intimate awareness, as though it completely understood who I was, more than I knew myself. Then, within that light, I saw him. At first, I struggled to identify who it was, but as I moved closer, a deep certainty filled me. It was Jesus, not the Jesus I'd known in Islam, the Prophet Isa, a righteous man, but nothing more, but someone entirely different. He radiated majesty and authority that left no room for doubt. He wasn't just a prophet, he was Lord. His gaze met mine, and I felt exposed, as if he saw every secret I had ever held, every fear, every question, and yet I sensed no condemnation. All I felt was an all-encompassing love, pure and unconditional, unlike anything I'd ever experienced. There were no spoken words, but an understanding flowed into me. He began to show me my life, not broken up into scattered memories, but as a connected whole. I witnessed my dedication to ritual, my prayers and fasting, my attempts to be righteous. I also saw my pride, my tendency to judge, and a spiritual arrogance that made me dismiss the goodness in others simply because they weren't Muslims. I had obeyed religious regulations so strictly that I had overlooked the core of what it meant to truly know God. Then came revelations that shook everything I believed. Jesus revealed the true origins of Islam, different from the accounts I'd always been taught. I saw scenes from Muhammad's life, his time in the cave, the forces that guided him. These were not heavenly revelations, but deceptive entities that twisted truths and spread falsehoods. I watched as these forces shaped a religion that, despite its sincere followers, burdened them with laws and regulations instead of pointing them toward a genuine relationship with God. As I took all this in, my world felt like it was crumbling. The doctrines and practices I'd held sacred were suddenly shown to be empty, and yet Jesus' love never wavered. He wasn't revealing these things to shame me, but to release me. For the first time, I comprehended the magnitude of his sacrifice. His crucifixion and resurrection were not just historical records, but the ultimate expressions of God's love. In that instant, I yielded everything, all my old convictions and beliefs. I accepted the truth of who Jesus is. As soon as I did, the light that enveloped him grew more radiant, filling me with a peace and indescribable joy. I knew my life would never be the same. When I woke up in the hospital, the sterile white ceiling came into view. My body was in pain, and the steady beeping of machines filled my ears. None of that mattered, though. I was alive, and I'd been granted a second chance. The first words that spilled from my lips were, Jesus is Lord. Samir was at my bedside, looking both relieved and bewildered. Aisha, what are you saying? He asked, clearly worried and confused. But there was no holding back. This truth was too immense to hide. What happened afterward was the most challenging period of my life. Declaring my faith in Jesus jeopardized almost everything: my marriage, my community, the life I had painstakingly built. Longtime friends distanced themselves, and I was branded an apostate. Still, amidst this abandonment, I discovered a new family, a group of believers who welcomed me without hesitation. It was in one of those small, quiet gatherings with my new community that I truly started to grasp the full significance of what had happened. We met discreetly, sharing our stories of transformation. One woman, also named Aisha, recounted a near-death experience like mine, where Jesus appeared to her. Her account echoed the revelations I had received. In that instant, I recognized I wasn't alone. God was working in incredible ways, drawing people from every corner of the world to himself. In the ensuing months, my faith grew stronger. I dived into the Bible with an unexpected hunger, and each verse seemed to spring to life, echoing the truths I had experienced. One verse in particular became my steady ground. I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. John 14:6. It was as if every question I'd ever carried and every doubt that plagued me finally found its resolution in those words. Nevertheless, the path forward wasn't easy. My children struggled with the shift in me, Yasmin especially. She grew distant, her probing questions mirroring the ones I had once pushed aside. It broke my heart to see her wrestling with those uncertainties. Adam, still younger, clung to the Islamic teachings he was accustomed to, wary of this new perspective. Despite this, I held on to hope and prayed fervently that God would reveal himself to them in his own perfect timing. One evening by myself, I was overwhelmed with the need to pray for my family. It was no longer a desperate plea, but a prayer of surrender and trust. I asked God to show them his truth, the same way he'd shown me. As I prayed, a deep sense of calm settled over me, a quiet confidence that he was already at work, even if I couldn't see every step.